Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. The Practical Guitarist Podcast is brought to you by Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Great Lakes Guitar Pickups provides fantasy tones at prices a practical guitarist will love. Featuring top-notch construction, attention to detail, and a fully custom product, if you can dream it, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups can probably build it. Follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Are you a regular listener? Why not? David here reminding you of all the ways you can participate in the Practical Guitarist Podcast. Subscribe using your chosen podcast app. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Practical Guitarist or on Twitter as @PracGuitarist. Support the show. Merchandise is available in our Threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. And donate to us via Patreon, available at patreon.com/practicalguitarist. Reach out to us directly via email at questions@practicalguitarist.com. Hello, Jim.
Hi, David.
What have you been up to?
Oh, geez. I weigh way too much. Is this a weight joke?
No. Were you checking your phone like I was to make sure that I was not the one that was beeping during the countdown?
I was not the one, but I muted it.
It was definitely me. Oh man. I'm freaking tired. I don't know. So I was up at 4:00 this morning. And anybody who's on Facebook at 4:00 in the morning, just reach out to me, talk to me, because I'm not doing anything, you know.
Because you're probably awake. It's amazing how often I've messaged you, and it's like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah, oh, dude. There are so many people. It's funny that there are people in the group that I see who are regularly on at like 3:30, 4:00 in the morning. Some of them are local to me, which I'm like completely flabbergasted. Like, don't you ever sleep? Like, because they're usually up later than I am too. You can see the bags into my eyes right now. It's really bad. Yeah. And then I got to get up early in the morning because my wife starts a new job and she has to hit the train at like 6:30. So it's all shenanigans. It's what it is.
It's shenanigans.
So I got a lot of stuff going on, man. I was at Good Time today, and I think that's probably a good conversation for the show, actually. So I walked in, brought my Kemper. Jeff we were kind of going back and forth in the Facebook group, and so I brought it in to play it through some different cabs.
Yep.
And it was just kind of a whim thing because I'm like, I would like to have some cabinet variety. I'm not really thrilled with my V30s. This goes back to my conversation from last week. I'm still kind of having some of the similar tonal, guffaws. I plugged my Kemper into my my recording rig. I've been using my full range, computer, not computer, but my studio monitors to monitor the Kemper here at the house lately. I didn't use my cabinet. And so I was having a better experience using the computer monitors, but I was still rolling off a lot of highs. And I wanted to just try some different things. So I took it in. We plugged it into the first cab. Actually, I saw a random cab, and I was like, well, let's try this. They had a Marshall 212 vertical. And the cool thing about it was the first profile I had on it was a Trainwreck. And a Trainwreck Express, which I'm going to go ahead and give this out to our listeners. So Trainwreck's Ken Fisher's company. Ken Fisher passed in 2006. He made a very small limited run of amplifiers under the Trainwreck name. And this includes the Trainwreck Express, the Liverpool, and the Rocket. The Express or the Rocket and Liverpool are kind of vaguely AC30 because they have an EL84 based power section. The Rocket is basically a hot rodded AC30. The Express is the amp that kind of made his name. It's basically a plexi that where it's been tuned to be the loudest, most aggressive, abrasive plexi on earth. To the point where if he cut one of the wires wrong, the thing would self-oscillate. I mean, it's just insanity how he built these things. And anyway, so I got some profiles and I put one on my Kemper and I've been playing it for the last week. Now again, been complaining about, irritating high end and stuff. You think a train wreck would be the opposite of what I want to do. And that's kind of why I gravitated towards it, just to see what happened. And we plugged it into this Marshall. It was like a 212 vertical cabinet. And I mean, it just brought that sound to life. I had a moment when I backed up and I heard the cabin like pushing towards me, and I realized, this is a lot better than I was getting out of my puny little V30 mini rectifier cabinet, which it's not a bad sound cabinet. But I don't think that sound is really what I'm going for right now. However, right. This is the funny part. So I asked Jeff, I said, well, what is this Marshall I'm plugged into? He's like, that's an MG 2x12.
Oh, geez.
So it's like Celestion 7080s in it. And I mean, it sounded pretty good. I was shocked by how good it sounded with the Kemper. Of course, cabinets defeated and all that, like inside the Kemper, so that I'm not filtering it through it or whatever. So we played around with that for 45 minutes or so, and then just running different profiles through it. The standout was the Corsa train rack. I think actually I liked a couple of the Victory profiles through it too. And then we played around with the different effects. There were two guys in the shop though that were they're regular visitors. Well, one of them is, and then I think the other one's a relative of his. And they were looking at the Fillmore. Now I gotta say, the Fillmore 25, the Mesa Boogie Fillmore, the small one, dude. I actually think I like the 25 now, maybe more than the 50. Yeah. And I had said that I would buy the 50 over the 25, but I don't know. I would have to play them both side by side and kind of switch back and forth, because the 25 he was able to get it to cook, and it wasn't. I mean, it was gig level. But it wasn't like the sound guy's going to come and beat you up after the gig kind of thing. So anyway, when I was playing, like, one of the guys, I heard him mention some Robin Trower. So I started playing all this stuff off Bridge of Sighs, including Bridge of Sighs, and played Danny Eagle, and it was playing Two Rolling Stoned, which are the three songs I know best off that record. And I could tell the guy was like, holy crap, of course. And then they were also asking questions about the Kiesel. And that lasted another 20, 25 minutes. But then we get done, and I was thinking I was going to pack up, and I started putting my stuff away. And I said, you know what? I said, I want to try Lone Star Cab. I tried one with my Mark V a while back. They're open back. They're kind of like, they're in between some other things. So we plugged in a Lone Star Cab. And I was floored by the fact that it was open back. It didn't project the way that the closed back cab does, obviously. But it took away a lot of the harshness, and the frequencies seemed to even out and be much more to what I'm looking for in a speaker cabinet. I could definitely see myself going more that way for another cabinet. Now, the other thing that happened was I got to try out the Mesa Boogie Grid Slammer. Now, I've known about this pedal for a while, but I hadn't had the wherewithal to plug it in. I was like, oh, it's just another tube screamer. I almost bought it one time. I almost bought one time, just on a whim, because I didn't have a tube screamer at the time. I have a tube screamer now. I have a mini tube screamer, and it's actually getting ready to get sold or given to somebody or whatever. And I think when we talked about the maybe my 50/50, my Pelican Noise Works 50/50, we might have to make a deal on that, Jim, because I got to get one of those Grid Slammers. That thing, so it has it has just the right contour of that mid scoop that you get in a tube screamer, but it's done in a different way. Jeff and I kind of went back and forth on whether we really consider it to be a tube screamer derivative. I think the circuit is probably very, very similar to most tube screamers, but I think that the circuit is also tailored to hit their amps well. But because their amps are very particular, they have a particular set of skills. No, the way that the bass contours around it, it seems like it's more present like 500 hertz, but it's just a little bit of a notch. And then there's some stuff going on in the high end, like almost like excitation, but not so much like you get with a tube screamer with the tone on like 2 o'clock. If you've ever done that, like it can get pretty rough depending on the amplifier. It was nothing but good with every profile I threw at it. So I don't know what kind of special sauce they cooked up in that tube screamer circuit to make that happen, and I don't care. What I do know is that I'll probably end up buying one. I still got a couple more I want to look at. I want to look at the full drive. Yes, I know everybody hates Mike Fuller. It's fine. You can hate him. I want to look at the full drive, and then that's really the last one I got to check off my list. But I think I'm going to end up with a Grid Slammer at this point. I really, really liked it. So, but I wanted to really talk about the cabinet question, which is, so got me thinking, what are the advantages and really a further discussion about like how you select the cabinet? Because we've talked about speaker selection and stuff on the show and like kind of the philosophical ramifications. But I think just the cabinet style and shape and size and how you kind of determine what works for the given setup you have. Now, I'm a believer, and I'll let you have the floor in a second, but I'm a believer that not one cabinet to rule them all. I think every guitarist needs a couple of different ones, like maybe a closed back 1x12 and maybe a closed back vertical 212 and maybe, something open back or even a convertible cab, which that's becoming more popular. So Jim, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Share your thoughts.
For me, a cabinet, one of my favorite cabinets, 4x10. Probably one of the tightest sounds that I've got was from a 4x10. On the other side of that, 2x12, definitely. I've never tried a vertical 2x12 ever. I've only had a 4x12.
You haven't lived.
So that's, I was just going to say that would be a new thing for me, a new bit of ground to be covered with me as far as a vertical 4x12. Or 4x12, 2x12. Sorry.
So I'm not going to poo-poo anybody by saying this. So the difference between a horizontal 2x12 and a vertical 2x12, just aside from the dimensions, aside from the form factor,
right?
So the vertical 212, and I haven't experienced this in a venue, so I can't really comment on this too much, but it's supposed to project more. But what I notice is the frequency characteristics are different, and there's a reason for that. There's a couple of good scientific reasons. Your bass frequencies drop, right? And then that speaker that's up top tends to be a little bit more present, and it's also closer to your ear. So as monitoring your cab, as it's like hitting you from behind or on the side, you're gonna be able to hear it better. For me, I play small box heads. It's actually really nice at the Kemper because the Kemper's higher up. I don't have to get down as close to see the screen, which I shouldn't really need to see the screen. But unfortunately, I end up playing different venues and people can't figure out that you can send line signal over microphone cable or microphone signal over microphone cable. So they tend to tell me, oh, it's too hot or it's too quiet. Even though the last time I was there, I haven't changed the settings, that actually happened to me at the last gig. We recalled the preset from the prior gig on the mixer, and he goes, "You're too quiet," and I'm like, "I don't understand because my volume is set the same." And he's like, "I don't know," and I wasn't gonna make bones with him. I was just like, "All right, I'll adjust it," because in the back of my head, I'm going, "Maybe you should try line level." But anyway,
it's funny to see people that don't even know what you're talking.
You'd like to hear the song anyways?
What?
Oh,
Alexa, shut up. I don't know.
What the heck did you say that would indicate to her that you wanted a song played?
I don't know. And knowing that thing over there, it'll probably play some Cannibal Corpse or something. In the background he goes,
yeah.
and then Jim will watch me start windmilling, And then my wife will have to call the paramedics because I'll throw my back out.
Yeah, it would be bad.
Yeah.
That'd be bad. Real bad.
So obviously I think the selection process on cabinets, well, it depends on what you're trying to achieve tonally, obviously.
Yeah. I think the tonal difference, all right, again, outside of those obvious differences with the 2x12, that's vertical. This is what I could see. Because obviously, most 2x12s are going to port somewhere. You're going to have some porting, right?
Potentially.
Right.
Potentially.
Well, I'm talking about inside the cabinet. You're going to build the cabinet. For those who think a cabinet is just a square box.
Its dimensions is how wide are the speakers apart from one another.
Right.
Oftentimes, that front baffle, there's no divider. And that really depends on the quality of the cabinet, whether there's a divider or not. I've seen both situations. Typically, your heavier cabinets are going to have some sort of divider in the center, and then there'll probably be a porthole or something so that there's not pressure buildup in the cabinet, basically,
right,
to prevent rattling and all that.
Yep.
But
go
ahead.
I would think that because so a 2x12 that's flat to the ground, and a 2x12 that's standing up. You'd be. I'm trying to picture the push of sound. I would think that your whole tonal focus of sound would be like for people who can't see me. I'm kind of clamshelling my hands.
Yeah, he's got a big clamshell going here.
Yeah. So if you're tonally porting a 2x12 that's vertical, you would start pushing the sound would be almost like this.
Yeah, it would go straight and at an upper angle.
And up, right.
Yeah.
Where a 2x12 is sitting down, it's going to do this. It's going
to go out and like in a V from the cabinet, from
the
center of the speakers. So I think you're partially right. I think the upper speaker in the 2x12 is really the vertical 212 is really the wild card. And that's because that speaker doesn't have as much acoustic coupling going on as the speaker on the bottom of the cabinet where the feet of the cabinet are. So if you think about like Orange understands that the acoustic coupling enhances the bass of their cabinets. So they put these they're not really feet. They're like a long bar of wood on the bottom of their cabinets, sometimes with grip tape. I've seen them with rubber too, to grab the floor. This is something that would not translate as well, I think, in a vertical 212 format. And I want to make a distinction because I've seen people take a 212 cabinet, just our standard 212, and then put it on its side. That is not the same thing. It's similar, but it's not the same thing because you don't have so in the typical 212 vertical, I've seen they usually slant the top speaker back slightly, just like in a 4x12. That's not to say all of them do it, but I think that's probably the desired configuration if you're going to do that. The one thing I don't like about them though, so if you ever seen the Mesa Boogie rectifier 212 vert, it's huge. It's almost the size of a 4x12.
Yep.
It's half the weight, but it's almost the size of a 4x12. Right now, I'm in between vehicles. I'm having to cart everything around in a Jetta. So a 212 vert is not probably going to work for me.
If you had bought a Jetta and then sold it and got it back, would that be a return of the Jetta?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
A Return of the Jedi. And are we talking about the car or the Dr. Z amp? Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter on this show.
The joke is just as bad no matter how you look.
Yeah. I don't know. Dr. Z and the TARDIS flying around in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. Waiting for the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Wow. I must be doing some hardcore drugs tonight. Let me tell you, folks.
Woo!
All right. So that aside, right? Like, I think we as guitar players, we're having this conversation. We're thinking about cabinets and we're thinking about tone, right?
Right.
But the reality is the cabinet is the one part of your rig that takes up the most space and the most weight. And so let's face it, the vast majority of working guitar players pick it based on weight and size.
That's right.
And that's almost as important criteria as tone for most players. Like, obviously, if you got roadies and stuff, that's a whole other ball of wax. But in my case, I'm in the unique position of probably going to buy a car in the next couple of months. I'm already looking, and I'm going to get a big trunk. I'm going to probably get an SUV, actually. And a small SUV, but big enough that I could probably cart around a 4x12 if I wanted to. Right. Do I want to do this? No. Even now, I'm like, no, because I'm going to be the one that's moving it around. I'm not going to ask. That's the first thing I want to point out. So if you have a band that's like really helpful and they're going to help you with your gear, that's great. I'm not that guy. Okay. I really don't want to ask people to help me with my gear. And it's not that I'm prideful or anything like that. It's just that that's my burden. Especially if I'm getting paid for it, like that shouldn't be your responsibility. It should be my responsibility. Plus there's other reasons too, which we can get to later in the show. Cause I actually have another story I want to talk about. So the other thing is, with cabinets, now we're starting to get into this whole realm of like, there being these alternative cabinets, like FR cabinets, or kind of pseudo FR cabinets. Thinking about the Tech 21 power amp thing, the power engine, which is a 60-watt solid state amplifier with a Celestion 7080 in it that is meant for amplifying modeling devices. And it's not incredibly loud, and the cabinet's not the best in the world. It's a $400, basically very simple powered speaker. And it sounds okay. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but I mean, you could gig with it if that was your primary method. And that is, I mean, when I see them in guitar stores, they list it as a cabinet, which kills me because it's like, it's not a cabinet, it's an amplifier.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking like FR is like an extension of that. So now you have like the Mission Engineering Gemini cab and Mission Engineering's 2x12 offering, which is conveniently painted green to match a certain other device that they're not endorsing. But they also make other green products for. It's weird. You might want to go look into that. I think it'll explain, that whole thing. But anyway, they make a 2x12 cabinet, and actually their cabinet looks straight up like a ripoff of the Mesa. But I think it's supposed to be more of an FR affair. So it's probably like an oversized 2x12 vert with like those Celestion G12s customized for flatness, or what's the new F12 or whatever is the one that they're doing. That's, which I have not heard good things about. Which I not the model of the universe, but I've seen some people complaining. But I also kind of wonder if it was user error.
Yeah, I always wonder that too.
Well, because there was a whole I saw a post in the Kemper group, and there was like a 30 posts following it where people were like, "No, you should do this. No, you should do that," and it almost seemed like the guy didn't understand that you're supposed to turn your cabinet modeling on when you're plugged into an FR cab. But then at the same time, it was like, I'm not really sure if that's what's going on here. So, but the other thing I've seen now is that so Celestia is starting to market replacement FRFR speakers for guitar cabs. So in other words, Kemper came up with this idea too. They wanted to get a cab that was voice neutrally that people could install in the speaker in their own cabinets, and then use the cabinet modeling inside the Kemper to justify that. And now they're kind of going another way with it, where the Kemper itself may actually be able to emulate certain speakers, kind of a la Power Cab without a smart cabinet, where the Kemper would take over the intelligence part of it.
Right.
Cool idea. Haven't seen it in execution yet, but I will say this: the speakers are already starting to make it into the marketplace, and I think it's a little confusing because people say, "Oh, well, this is a guitar driver," but it's not really a guitar driver. And then you go and you put this in a cab, and yes, it's optimally designed to be used in sort of like a guitar cab scenario. So it's like there's no horn in the cab, and all that kind of stuff. And it's not a plastic cab; it's a wooden cab. So there's certain things you can do to the speaker to make it fit in those sorts of scenarios. But the thing that they neglect is that a Marshall cabinet is not constructed in any way like a Fender cabinet or a Mesa Boogie cabinet or an Orange cabinet or any of the other major cabinet vendors. I mean, Mesa makes ported cabs. They make the Thiel, and I don't think that's going to operate the same with that speaker as, say, like, a big Marshall 4x12. So I'm kind of like at a loss as to why they would be doing this. Never mind the fact that because those cabs aren't neutral, you're going to be introducing several layers of filtering as opposed to just a speaker model. You've got a microphone model on that, and you've got air, and then the speaker model, and then anything else in that signal path will be reproduced by speakers. So the idea of going to like a true FRFR where you have like a PA cabinet makes more sense for that scenario. Until Kemper gets their update out, that's going to allow people to just dial in. Okay, so this is going to sound like a creamback, I will say this: I'm more excited about Kemper's application of the speaker modeling idea than I am Line 6's implementation of it. And I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way. I'm not I'm not anti Line 6 in any way. I see that Kemper will be able to continuously maintain, modify, and add speaker models to their product even after, the rollout of that feature, whereas Line 6 is going to be kind of stuck with what you get when you buy it, which is only, 5 models, I think? You're a guitar singer, Jim. You've heard the Power Cab now, I'm sure.
Yep.
What do you think of it?
I like it.
Well, compared to a traditional guitar cab.
Okay, well, all right. For me, oh geez, how do I say this? I like a lot of traditional cabs, a lot of but I think it holds its own. I think it's easier for me to if I was going to put it in place, move it around. That's, you got to remember, portability for the average person is a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's got to be durable, and that's where the Power Cab really comes into play. It feels like something you can, that can fall off of the truck as you're moving it in.
Is it
the little hand truck. And
is it plastic or wood? I don't remember.
I think it's wood.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know I've had my hands on it multiple times. You think I remember?
But it's got a nice coating. It feels rugged.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was cheap plastic. If it was plastic,
no,
not like an Alto. One of the cheaper Alto cabs, like the traditional format, a PA cab.
Right.
Do you guys have the one with the speaker modeling in stock? I think they all have the speaker modeling, right?
I believe so. Yeah, the one we have has the speaker modeling in stock. Have you
got a chance to mess around with the speaker modeling?
Yep.
What did you think of that? Because that's one feature I haven't really played around with too much.
I liked it. You could definitely hear total differences, whether or not, because after you play with 3 or 4 minutes, like, does that really sound like that? Yeah, baby. But I'll say this, at least it does give you those tonal varieties. You might find something you like. Where if you buy a traditional cabinet, you don't have that.
Right.
You don't have it.
Unless you swap the speakers yourself, and even then, it's difficult to do an A/B.
Exactly.
I was having a conversation with someone who'd actually bought one, right? And they were telling me that, in their opinion, they thought the speaker modeling was kind of cartoony, and in the sense that, like, so they're like, oh well, I think there's a greenback model in there, and I'm going to use that as an example. It's the green or the blue. I'm not sure which. And they were making a comment that it's like the worst implementation of the greenback in the sense that it's like a very brittle sound, which the greenback is often described that way. I've heard people say that before.
Yeah,
it's a muscular but brittle sound, and that's it kind of fell apart under pressure because it was like, well, it doesn't have any of the stuff that would round the speaker out and make it more palatable. It's like they focused on the characteristics they knew people would look for. And I'm not going to get in the middle of the debate because I obviously don't have the breadth of knowledge on it. But I think the power cab is a very unique new option for guitar players, even if you're using a traditional amplifier, to run a line out to a power cab and use that for the speaker modeling. And then you can have different speaker models for different sounds.
Right.
So I'm sure anybody who's tinkered with modeling in the past has considered using a Fender for clean and a Marshall for dirt. And you could actually literally set that up where you have a MIDI adapter, and you hit a switch and they both change, including your modeler changes from Fender to Marshall, and your speaker changes from a Jensen to a greenback. Which I think there's valid applications to that. Also, the fact that you can have your sound guy mic it like a traditional cab. That's kind of bonkers to me. When you have like a sophisticated piece of digital tech that you're going to have a mic it.
Yeah, you're going to put a mic in front of it.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the principles of using a microphone as a filter or an EQ really apply there, and it gives you another level of tone shaping.
Right.
I don't think the power cab with the built-in IR is as slick a deal, personally, but just because the IR kind of defeats the purpose of having the speaker model, because the IR does not model the speaker; it models the speaker, the microphone, and the signal chain that goes along with that.
Yep. So, yeah, I like the power cab. I'm a fan. I think I would look into getting one personally, for a lot of various reasons. Obviously, it would be for use for the Kemper down the road. I'm not sure if as much as I love a 4x10, and that is my favorite configuration, 4x10. Much as I love a 4x10, realistically, at my age, it would literally have to come with its own hand truck. I mean, and a little bit of motor on it to boot. I have one of the hand trucks that they sell. I happened to get one while Guitar Center had them on sale, or when it was a blowout or what. But it has like a little wheel configuration where I go upstairs, go up and downstairs with it.
They have that?
Yeah.
How much is that?
I got it. Now here
I don't care. I don't care what you got it for. Tell me how much it is retail, because I'm going to go buy one.
Well, I got it for $54. I don't know how much it is for retail. Hold on.
It's probably $100.
Yeah, I was going to say it was just about 100, 110.
If it goes up and downstairs, take my money, Jim. I don't.
I'll get you one if I see another.
Just
seriously, I'll buy you one and I'll send it.
Take my money. Just take it. I have cash in hand. Like, I'm literally holding it in my hands right now. Yeah. That is something that would prevent me from doing a lot of stupid crap.
Oh yeah, I love it. I got it in there. It's the coolest little thing. It goes, instead of clock.
It's like the thing that Hannibal Lecter uses in Hannibal when he rolls a guy up the stairs so he can gut him and throw him out the window. Right.
Perfect. Yep, that's the one.
Except, well, his is motorized, but
Yeah. I would. That's why I said it would have to be a truck and it would have to have motors on it. I tested out I was looking at a used Fender DeVille
Yeah.
4x10, and I love the sound of it.
All right.
I mean,
All right. I know.
but
I know you like,
I'd be banging it around,
dude.
and the tubes.
Dude, if you're gonna get a Fender DeVille 4x10, do not get a Fender DeVille 4x10. Save yourself the money and go get yourself a super reverb.
Exactly.
Because why would you do that to yourself?
Oh, I know.
It's like honestly, I don't even know why the Fender DeVille 4x10 exists anymore, because it's just like, here, why don't I just, and this is a male analogy. You know, I'm a man, so I can use this analogy.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's a female analogy and whatever. But like, just cut my balls off, because honestly, like the super reverb, that's where it's at. That's the whole reason that amp exists, in my opinion. I mean, yes, of course, there's the Fender Basemans and stuff, but they don't do it. In my opinion, they don't do a great Bassman impression.
No,
but they do a sort of halfway decent super reverb impression, and you can get Silverface super reverbs, which are very close to the Blackface era of amplifiers for peanuts. I mean, I think I saw one go recently for $780 in our area. So,
yeah, relatively inexpensive when you think about it. Love it.
It would be easy to convert it to Blackface spec if you wanted to as well. I mean, that's more power than most people want to handle. But
so while we're talking about cabs, we're talking about Fender. I got to try again the 2x12 Tone Master. Is it? Tone Master?
So you're all into the twin.
I'm telling you, that thing was incredible.
I don't want a twin though. Like, that's the last thing I'd be interested in.
Okay, so you know how we talked about what are the things that guitar is going to become? What is guitar?
Sure.
Towards, right?
And I could definitely see the twin being like the archetypical amp.
Yep. But here's something I want to say. Right after we did that, guess who did that same discussion? Rick Beato.
I know.
You know what's funny?
And so did Ryan Burke. He brought it up again too on his show.
Did he?
Yeah.
So Rick Beato went into that, and guess what? They came up with the same points we did. I had to laugh because 3 guys on Beato's panel came up with the same point. I'm not saying we're great. I'm just saying that it is a given. Certain things need to happen with guitar to move forward.
Right.
To go into a new age. And I think, and they mentioned that they mentioned the amp that I was talking about there, the Tone Master. And what's funny is they mentioned it, and they said the same thing that I said. Number one, the DI out, that needs improvement. Okay, I couldn't get one right now, I don't think, because the DI out for it, which is obviously one of the things you're going to use for it, needs to be better. They need to make it so you can upload a DI.
Or you know, like some sort of impulse response or whatever. Is it just like a straight line out, or what is it? I haven't.
It's just a straight XLR out, and I think I don't know if there's even a ground lift.
Well, there's supposed to be a cab model on it. I know, and it's supposed to be their IR of that cabinet.
That's right, and they did. That's where they dropped the ball.
Yeah, because so many people. It's like everybody mics amps differently, and I think part of the signature sound of some guitarists is the way they mic amps. Like Brian May comes to mind. He's a big guy that says that I want, a 57 direct on the cone and nothing else.
Yep. So you really don't have much choice when it comes to the Tone Master, as far as the output, which just seemed weird to them and to me. You can't upload your own IR when it comes to that amp.
You should at least have options for different ones.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Because you don't always just want the one that you have. And it is really the one that they provide is not that good. So I guess there's 3 amp sims, and I'm not sure. Let's see. I'm not really sure what the 3 amp sims are based on. But it says 1, 2, and F. I have no idea what that means. But and you have a balance line out, and you have a level 4. So you have a level ground lift and one F and 2. But they are programmed in, they can't be changed.
Yeah, see, that would have to change. I actually
Oh, here it is. It says it doesn't even tell you where they are.
well, you know what? I don't even really care if it has a line out because that amp is really supposed to be mic'd up. I mean, that's
and you would think a 2x12. That's the whole idea for buying a 2x12. If you're going to do this amp, which the one I'm talking about is the Twin Reverb 100 2x12. I know there's a 1x12 as well. If you're going to get this, and it's relatively light, we have a 2x12 in the store. I was amazed at how light.
They're what, like 27 pounds or 28 pounds?
Yeah, super light.
Yeah. What did I see the other day? Oh, so Mesa came out with a 1x10 version of the Mark V 25, in a 1x10 combo. Jim, guess the weight on that.
47 pounds.
20. I think it's 22 pounds.
Wow.
It's 22 or 24. It's light.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually Mesa.
For a 2.
We've got.
And I mean, it's basically, it's the same head, right? Which is like 11 pounds or 13 pounds with a 1x10 cab with a cream back in it. Wow. I mean, it's a lot of amp for the money. It's 16. I think it's $16.99. It's not a cheap amp, but that's a configuration. I mean, if you're small gig, or like a rehearsal amp, a Mark V 25 is. I mean, you can play that on a big stage, and nobody's going to bat an eye, as long as it's mic'd up. Depending on how big the stage and how loud your drummer, etc. But I mean, my Mark V 25 can stay clean and be louder than any drummer I've ever played with, and that's saying something. So yeah, but like a little 1x10. My only comment on the amp was that I hate 1x10s. I've never been a big fan of a 1x10. I've had a Princeton. I've had various other little 1x10s. And while I've had okay results, I've never found one that was like, yeah, that's what I want right there. I had a 2x10 that I really liked, but I've never had a 1x10 that I liked. I think you have to have like a certain amount of air moving with guitar, and I think a 1x10 just falls slightly short of what I like because it's a thinner, more shrill sound because you're not moving as much air.
Right. So just to finish with what the Fender had, the F means a flat response. In other words, you're sending out a flat response. So it's 2 IRs and a flat response, but it doesn't tell you.
Or like a neutral, 2 IRs and neutral. So then you can apply your own IR with an outboard modeling device.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to the 1x10, I have not met a 1x10 I liked. It would be hard for me. Now, the beauty of the amp that you're talking about, the Mesa, is this. I can always put it to something.
Right, and I was getting there, which is that it has a plethora of options for a flexible output.
There's overhead galore.
It even has a cab clone that you'll never use. Because the first time you do, you'll realize, wow, that's a waste.
That sucks.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Mesa Boogie to do an official factory modification, and they may never do it because the amps are so popular. I'm sure they've sold more of those than they did Mark II C pluses. There should be a factory mod where they take, instead of the closed back and vintage position, when you put it in the closed back position, it defeats the cabinet modeling and just gives you a direct out, because that's all we really want from that thing. You're like, your analog modeling, quote unquote, of a speaker is horrible. I mean, if that's what guitar amps sound like recorded, no one would play them.
No.
It's very flat sounding. It's not.
Yep.
It does not sound like a speaker.
No.
It sounds like an EQ, actually. Tweaks doesn't sound like a speaker. It's very harsh. But No, so I think that's a good distinction too. Is that like we're in the era right now where cabinets really don't mean anything. You don't
Right?
need to have one. I mean, you could
No.
buy as part of our cabinet discussion. You could buy something like the Sur reactive load, or even the Mesa Boogie IR loader, and
Yeah.
that's it. That's the only thing you
Yeah.
need. That and an amplifier, or even like a torpedo. They have the 2 notes torpedo
Yeah.
capped.
The
I
two
think it's the
notes.
captor is the one that goes on your board, and you can run your pedal board direct into it.
Yep.
And Moore has the radar, which and I think there's like the Nux Solid Studio and some other products that are similar. That is like a power amp modeler and cabinet modeler with IR capability that you literally just run your pedals into.
Now the beauty of two notes captor, whether you get the 8, the 4, or the 16, it's the price of a decent cab, but it weighs what, 3 pounds?
I mean, it's one less piece of gear you have to carry because it's mounted on your board.
And now what is it? The PT15, right?
Yeah, the amplifier. That's an amplifier, though.
Yeah, the PT15. That's Pete Thorne's, obviously 15.
We're going to see more amps with IR loaders built in. It's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. You're going to see a lot of tube amps come with IR loaders in the next 15 years.
Right.
Specifically, probably in the next 5 years. I expect that there will be at least one announced at NAMM.
I think we're going to see. Well, I said this last year. Okay, so I have a feeling that Wampler's coming out with.
Oh, that's going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it's a matter of time. That Wampler's
I can see all of those guys like Wampler, Keeley, and all the others doing it at the same time. Like they're going to roll out within a year of each other. And
these guys are truly going to do. It's going to be Wampler, Keeley, somebody like that is truly going to do. When we talk amp in a box, we're going to get an amp in a box.
I really think, I was going to say, I think Wampler is probably the guy to do it because his product line is very, very largely seen as a collection of amp and box pedals.
Yep.
And then I think everybody else will follow suit with something that's not an amp in a box necessarily, but it'll be an IR loader for their pedals to run into. And they might even bring out little lines of amp in a box pedals to fit their IR loader. I used to think Tech 21 was the king of that, the amp in a box thing.
They were.
Oh, yeah, but it's because they were the only ones doing it. Now, I mean, dude, there's so many great amp in a box pedals. And we talked about the Ethos TWE last week. I mean, I've been looking at clips of that thing all week. And that thing is monstrously good. And the only thing it doesn't have is a speaker emulator. If it had a speaker emulator, it'd be a done deal. I'd ordered one already. And then there's New Neighbor has their what do they call it? IQ or something, which is their amp modeler in a box, and it's just ridiculously powerful. I don't know. You have to look it up. They have one
right now.
Yeah. I know they have one because I've been looking at it too.
Let's see.
It's not the.
I always like looking at New Neighbor stuff.
I understand why. I mean, it's the Neuron Gain Intelligence, which has an one IR built into it, but there's a corresponding product that's like an expander for that allows you to add all sorts of cabinet modeling functionality to that existing pedal. Which I think New Neighbor, if you're not familiar with their product range, like they're like a well-kept secret in the States. I don't think they're super popular. Their pedals are not cheap. I mean, they're $250 a piece for most of them, and some of them are $300. But from what I've seen and what they do, I mean, they're powerful boxes. They have a reverb that is just sick. I would be more interested in, for the purposes of this conversation, looking at the cabinet modeler that they're building. So they have a section called the drive and I'm looking at it. So the Iconoclast is their speaker.
The Iconoclast.
And it's only $250.
$250.
Low, mid, high, and gate. And I believe it's got a USB port on it. And I'm pretty sure you can upload IRs into this. And I think you still need a direct box for this, if I recall. But I mean, for $250, like even the blue box from Amp One is not a you can't load IRs into it. Although I do see that they don't talk about loading IRs, they talk about using your PC to make deep editing. I would assume that's a feature, but maybe it's not. But even so, just the ability to have more control over the device, because this has got similar controls to what you'd find on like the blue box, for example.
Yep.
Except that it does not have a model selector, so you probably have to do that in the software. I don't know. I like the blue box. I still think the blue box is probably the quality option if you're gonna go. But the Iconoclast is, I think, $100 cheaper, $150 cheaper.
Yep, for $250.
It would definitely be something to look at.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more products like this. There are actually a lot more than probably people care to realize right now. There's a lot of direct boxes that offer a cabinet modeling option.
This is the one thing that those guys said on the video that I have to agree with wholeheartedly. I'd like to see more companies do what Fender did, and that is to come out with. I'd love to see, like Marshall, do a Tone Master like version of some of their more iconic.
After
amps.
the disaster that was Marshall Code, I predict they're gonna wash their hands of digital for a while.
It's a possibility.
I mean, they might, but if they do come out with a new product, it's going to be someone else's design with their name on it.
Well, I think that's the problem with the well, maybe Marshall in general right now, because at least on the digital side, because if I remember right, all of the code inside of the code was actually done by another company.
We don't know that for sure. That's I do know PV, when they did the Viper series, when they first started coming out with their digital modeling thing, they hired a very prestigious, well-known modeling company to come in and do all of their work for them. And no one has ever confirmed to me what company it was. I've had two PV employees tell me this happened, and kind of in a roundabout way, they suggested it was either Line 6 or Strymon, which I believe it would have been Damage Control at the time if it was Strymon, because it was before they did the Strymon thing. And those guys came in and consulted because they were out of work for PD, and they designed all of the front end of the Viper. So the Viper is kind of like what Line 6 could have become had they continued down that path. But essentially, that's what I've been told. I don't know if that's necessarily the way that works out. It's never really been confirmed that, hey, so we hired Line 6 to come in and do it. But they definitely had some help from people in the industry that were in the know. And PV had some money at that point to throw around. They've got nothing now. I mean, their PA systems have got to be the only thing keeping them in operation at this point.
It's got to be.
I mean, they still sell a lot of 6505s.
6505s.
And they still sell, like, they got the Misha Mansour stuff, but I think they haven't had a hit guitar in a while. I can't remember like a hit PA product that they've been putting out. I know they have a big inroads with the praise and worship circuit.
I haven't seen anything from them on the bass side of things.
I mean, they were making some stellar instruments on both the bass and guitar aisle when they had EVH over there, and really around that same time period.
Yeah. Well, I think that someone would have to correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe our friend Robert Jackson could chime in, but I think they've stopped making any musical instruments in the States, if any at all.
No, they actually just brought some back. Yeah.
Did they?
They're making EVH shaped guitars again.
No,
that's as of like last year, I think. If you go to their website, I don't know if they've actually hit the streets, but they had announced it. They were calling it something else, though. I think
the Two.
Yeah, that's
Is that out yet? I haven't seen it.
no, I don't. So I don't think they've actually hit the streets yet. They're probably in litigation.
Oh my god!
But I'm gonna
That's
be
good.
honest with you. Like I am very interested. If the HP2s come out, they are USA made, by the way.
Yeah.
If they actually do get through the process of doing it, if they could make one with like a roasted maple neck, I would be all in. I'd pay to refret it. Because
Yeah.
I had a special and I let it go and I don't miss it, but I feel like if I found the right one, I would be all in, you know.
So if they're making, I wonder if they're still making the Cirruses in the States.
It's a possibility. I thought they had overseas production everything, and now it looks like they're starting to come back. By the way, these are available for sale. Because there are reviews on them there, and there are people with pictures of them.
Wow.
And actually, what's pretty amazing is this guitar is like the case is even nice. I mean, it's dude. I'm all in. You know what I wish PV would do? I wish PV would give Buddha a fair shot. Stop trying to cheapen it. Stop trying to pimp the name. And make some honest to God boogie, or like not boogie, but Buddha designs, like what they had in the beginning. Go back to those original amplifiers and make some stuff that people actually want. They have the V20 Series 2 Super Drive. I don't want a V20 Series 2. I want a Super Drive. And I want it to be like a Super Drive.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is my rant on Voodoo for the night. So let's switch gears. I have another anecdote.
Well, guess what? It says I could get one at Guitar Center.
Yeah, you just Guitar Center is a stocking.
I might look to see if I could get my hands on a HP2 Moonburst.
Yeah, there's some nice looking guitars, man.
Wow.
So here we go. Anecdotally, I bought cable supplies this morning. I bought TechFlex. Which is not really TechFlex. It's what do they call it? Expandable sleeving. I bought expandable sleeving. I bought heat shrink, whole kit of heat shrink because I don't have any. I bought cable. I bought 4 Neutrik plugs for XLR, male, female, two each. And then, so I bought all the stuff I need to make 2 25-foot, or 20. Really, I'm going to go shoot for 20-foot cables, and then have like 5 foot of excess if I, do it right the first time. And I'm a little frustrated because I'm having to make cable. I hate making things, but I'm kind of sitting here thinking like, why are more microphone cables not coming with TechFlex? At this point, that should be an option for a lot of cable companies to be looking at. And I understand why. I mean, TechFlex, the brand is an expensive product, but but the expandable sleeving is not expensive in bulk. So I bought 100 feet of it. Cost me $12 on Amazon. Now, whether this is rated for fire or anything like that, because it's a plastic product, who knows? But I'd like to believe that this is probably just the same stuff, and it probably is. So here's the deal. I got to thinking, like, before I pulled the trigger, because I was up at 4:00 this morning, and I was kind of investigating this, watching YouTube videos, people assembling XLRs and stuff, because I've never actually built an XLR. I built plenty of 1/4-inch and stuff over the years, but I was looking, and I thought to myself, well, looking at actual like pre-built cables, and I was going, what I want is really going to be about. There's one brand I could probably buy and get away with for cheap, but I'm just tired of breaking cheap cables. I've gone through 3 in as many weeks almost. I think I'm 4 weeks. I think I've gone through 3 XLRs, and they're $20 a piece for a 20-foot cable. I don't think it's an expensive price, but when the $20 cable is like totally throwaway, I don't even look it would take more time out of my day than it is worth for me to take the cable to Guitar Center and get the replacement. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if I was to take the time out of my day at work to make a 30-minute trip over to Guitar Center at the end of the day, which would have to leave work early, it's just not worth it. So I decided to build. I bought halfway decent stuff. I didn't splurge or anything.
Right.
But it got me thinking and about what really bothers me about electric guitar and microphone cables. First off, this stuff is wear parts, and it's horrendously expensive.
Yep.
I mean, this is copper wire stranded. I get it. That is kind of a precious metal in the sense that we use a lot of it, but this takes 2 to 3 minutes for skilled labor to assemble. It doesn't have any strain relief. I'm holding an XLR in my hand. It doesn't have any strain relief on it. It doesn't have anything to protect really the raw rubber outer layer, right? And even inside this, they're not making any effort to really like protect the internal components of the cable. Now, part of that's because the way that we've been doing this is sort of traditional in the sense that we're not really exploring new materials and that kind of thing because it has to be modular and it all has to work together. But it wasn't really the cable that bothered me. And what it was that I don't have any control over what happens to my cables. We've all been to a gig, right? I'm hoping. If you haven't been to a gig, this is what it's like, right? You go in, you set up your gear, you try to run your cables as neatly and nicely as possible. The guy next to you is literally just throwing crap on the floor. I mean, he's literally just throwing his cables right across the monitors and everything else to get back to the wherever the board's at. He's not taking a second to think about, man, we should get a snake so we don't have to do this anymore, where we're going to be tearing everything up. Then you get to start playing, and like your cables are all nicely, neatly bundled, and they're away from the band. But for some reason, that one drunk guy keeps standing on your cables, and you're like, "What? Why are you even here? Like, nobody else is dancing, you idiot. Go sit down." Like, and I had this happen at a recent show. Guys bumping into the monitor stands. And I'm like, because there's literally a 2-foot path between the monitor stand and the table in front of it. And I'm like, the leg of the monitor stand actually eclipses that 2 feet and makes it down to about 8 inches. So they're stepping over the leg, and they're drunk, right? They're stepping over the leg to get to the bathroom. So I get smart, and I'm like, I'm going to put a chair there. I watched 2 people move the chair so they could climb over the monitor stand to take a leak. And that's when I realized that's not going to work. So my wife moved and sat in the chair. And I kid you not, a gentleman walked up behind her, tapped her on the shoulder, and asked her to move.
Excuse me.
My mother, who happened to be sitting next to her, says, "You can go around." And if you know my mother, you know that's exactly how she said it. You can go around. And the guy didn't say a word. He turned, he went down the clearly marked path that the restaurant maintains for people to walk in, and walked back to his table, which actually was easier for him to get to than crawling across the monitor stand. Because sometimes the shortest distance between 2 objects is not a straight line. Anyway, so nevertheless, monitor stand, that's one thing, right? So that's a whole other thing. But that's what a gig is like, right? So you got cables everywhere and people are standing on them. What is the worst possible thing you can do to your cables, Jim? Yeah, you got it. And stand on them or have a cymbal fall on them. That is the second worst thing, right? And I'm fortunate that I have not had this happen yet, because I've heard of people getting like a crash cymbal knocked over to their cables and sawing them in half and literally just cutting them. I'm fortunate that has never happened to me, because all you have to do is damage that braid, that shielding braid on the outside of your 1/4-inch cable. There's rubber sheath, and then on the inside there's this copper braid that runs all the way around your cable, and then the conductors in the center. You damage that copper braid, cable's toast. Which is funny because you'd think that they would try to protect both components equally, but they don't. Anyway, nevertheless, the funny anecdote of this all is that you have no control over what happens to your cables. Like once you set them up, you can do. It's like raising children. You can do the best job in the world trying to prepare them for those, high school days. But when the kids start getting into high school, they start getting into trouble regardless. It doesn't matter how well you prepared them because they're going to expose themselves to things that you didn't predict. And so it's essentially the same thing as dealing with your cables, except that, at least with your teenager, you can ground them, you can take away their license, but as a musician, you really can't stop using cables. So,
Exactly.
Even wireless, you have to have cables to make wireless work. And I know people are thinking well, that kind of defeats the purpose of it. Think about it. You realize you have to still have cables to make wireless work. So this is the real issue, right? And this is the rub I want to leave everyone thinking about a little bit. So if you don't know how to wrap your cables properly, let me explain a couple things. First thing, don't wrap them tightly around your fist. That's not a good idea. I will not name names, but there's an individual I know that I play with frequently who does this and then complains about his cables breaking. And I haven't had the heart to have this conversation. So if he's listening, you know who you are. I'm sorry. I have to bring it up. And it's just because you're the anecdote, right? It's not because I hate you or anything. Actually, I think you're a great human being and all that. But please wrap your cables nicely. Don't do that. And then don't use your elbow. Don't wrap from your hand to your elbow. Look up online the proper way to wrap a cable using the Rody wrap method. I will provide another anecdote. So I went to a jam and I had cables on the floor and I ran them around everybody so that they wouldn't be in the line of fire. I'm sure they were getting stepped on anyway. Makes no difference. And what I discovered was when I was all done, they were going to be real nice to me and help me with my gear. This is what I was talking about earlier. People who help me with my gear, they kind of drive me nuts because it's just let me deal with it because I kind of know the right way to do it.
You're not helping.
It's not. I don't want to say that because look, I do appreciate it. When you need to help me move a cabinet, I'm thrilled if you're going to help me. But so this individual was picking up my cable. And this has happened with multiple people. So I was like, no, I got that. And I said, just like that, I'm not being a jerk. I got that. Don't worry.
Right.
And so I walk over and I grab the cable from him. Not rip it out of his hands or anything. I just reach out and he gives it to me. And then I immediately just drop the cable on the floor and I start over. And I do the Rody wrap method in front of him. And it's funny because I wrap it up way faster than he was able to. Because if you've learned to do this method, once you get the movement down, it's super easy and fast to wrap cables. And
that's right.
It was so funny because I did it and I wasn't even thinking. I was like, man, that was a really jerk move because he saw me literally drop the cable on the floor and start over. And I'm sure he realized he didn't like how I was doing it. And
well, hopefully he realized that it's because there is a specific way.
Yes. And I want to apologize to this person if they're listening to the show first off, because that's a dick move for me to do what I did. But at the same token, I spend a lot of money on my gear and I like to take care of it as best I can so that things don't break frequently, like my XLR cables, which are just freaking violently angry right now. Because dude, I'm on a $40 allowance. And here I am buying mic cables 3 times a month. It's ridiculous. I know, Jim. You and I both have probably got $500 or $600 in cables. It's just craziness. And they're not even
Easily.
expensive cables. They're like low end, mid level cables. You know.
Oh, I think my most expensive cable is like a $40 cable that you would get a present or whatever.
So, couple other things about cables, I guess. So I get this thing all wrapped up. I keep these Velcro cable ties. These are great. If you don't have them, you've never used them, try them out sometime. You can get them on Amazon. They're dirt cheap. But you know what the funny thing is? I can't tell you the amount of people who see me with them who are like, "What's that?"
It's a Velcro.
Well, no, like, what's that? Like, what do you need that for? And it's
like,
because if you don't wrap them up like that, you're just gonna pull. If you put cables in a bag like civilized people, or in a bin like civilized people, when you pull the cable out, you're gonna grab like part of the cable, and it's gonna get tangled up with other cables, and then before you're over with, you're gonna have 10 minutes of you actually just sorting cables out, so that you're not making a giant mess.
Yeah, my wife went and bought me like a 60 pack or 90 pack of those things. I mean, it's a big. I'm still taking them out of that thing, but she bought them in a ridiculous color.
I was just gonna say, because nobody knows what these things are. They're perfect identifiers,
right? That's my cable. It's got.
You'll never have someone steal your cables ever again if you do this.
Yep.
Now they also make heat shrink labels you can get for cabling.
That's the other. That's right. She got me some of that too and put my name on them. A lot of my cables are heat shrink. You wouldn't believe, those of you who have gone to a gig, wouldn't believe the number of sound guys or co-band members who have tried to take my freaking cables home. Ooh, nice 20-foot XLR you got there. And then
all right.
No, that's mine. It's got my name on it.
So this is what I don't understand about people stealing each other's cables. Because I know that there has actually been theft. I've been in places where people have tried to literally steal someone else's cable. And it's when you see them grab the cable that's out of somebody else's amp and somebody else's guitar and they wrap it up and throw it into their bag, and you know that it came out of the other person's bag earlier that night, you go, what's going on here? Why would somebody steal somebody else's cable? There's no marketable value to cable. Is it just because you don't want to buy them? Like, are you that lazy?
How?
I don't know.
How?
I don't know, man. We're getting to the point though where the price of cables is getting to like where some people will just literally not be able to afford them, which is pretty crazy to me. I've seen cables now go for like budget level cables for $20 for like a 15-footer. And that's we're getting into insanity territory. But I mean, that's the cost of doing business now. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the cable company's fault. Like, that's the one thing you remember. If you ever loaded up a bag of cables, you'll realize very quickly that cables are heavy. They're not light pieces of gear. Especially in mass. Like, I put the 4 cables I need to run my Kemper. So it's a power cable, guitar cable, an Ethernet cable, and I think it's in an XLR, right? For a jam in my bag. And it literally doubled the weight.
Oh, it does. That's one thing that so if you've had to put, I have a bag, right? I have a Targus like
a backpack.
bag.
Yep, I have a duffel bag, but it's the same thing.
I have one that has nothing but XLR cables. Folks, I will not kid you when I tell you that's probably 25 pounds. Just XLR cables in a bag. And then I have another bag that's quarter-inch cables of varying lengths. Each one is of varying lengths. And that is also another 25 to 30 pounds. I literally am tearing the fabric away from the backpack on my back. But, even if you were bringing, like you said, let's say I'm going to bring a 20-foot or 15-foot XLR cable, right? And then, like you said, I need a couple of quarter-inch. Say I've got a 10 or a 20-foot quarter-inch cables. That's going to add 3 or 4 pounds to your weight.
So you talk about XLRs, right?
Yeah, they are really
they're the heaviest, right? But you know the funny part is I've seen plenty of people who buy 100-foot XLRs. That's all they buy. And they have like 10 100-foot XLRs. Let me tell you a tip. If you haven't realized this, and I've enlightened some people, and they're like shocked when they find this out. Here's a good reason to buy XLR cables with really good plugs.
Yeah.
You can connect them together and you can extend the cable. So if you really need a 100-foot run and you didn't plan on it, you take your 4 or 5, 20 or 25-foot cables, depending on your need, and you stick them together. It's not optimal.
That's exactly.
But it'll work.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say. The longest XLR cable I have is 25 feet. Because I was an idiot and I bought a 50-footer once. And that thing must weigh 12 pounds. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You can't even fit it. Like if you want to stick it in your gig bag, you can't. Because it's like 4 inches tall.
That makes it cable.
You have to put 2 Velcro ties together to wrap around it. It's like your forearm.
Yeah, and my Velcro tie was long. It's like 4 inches.
Yeah, Jim, thanks for the measurement, because I'm like looking at your fingers. I'm like, I don't know how long your fingers are. Like, what the hell?
It's like 4 inches. It's crazy. I was floored, literally, by the amount of money that a 50-foot cable costs, too.
And you know what's funny? Like, the actual cable shouldn't increase the price of a cable that much at all. Because, so this is
no, the expensive part is
this is the connectors, and even the connectors aren't expensive, Jim. That's a myth.
But I'm just saying, I'm just saying for most cable builds, the cable connector is more expensive.
You can get the cables I bought, the connectors I bought today, I think were $3 each. They're $3.50 a piece. They were the cheaper Neutrik jacks. But you can go on Amazon, and I could have bought them on Amazon. I decided I would rather give Sweetwater my business. You can go on Amazon and you can get Neutrik jacks from them for like half that. Now, are they genuine Neutrik? Who knows? But chances are you're going to get a Neutrik branded jack or Neutrik branded plug. So who cares?
Right.
As long as it functions properly and it doesn't sound like crap. Which, I mean, it's an XLR cable. That's a whole other conversation, but it's probably going to be fine. And you can make cables cheap. That's what I was going to say. So the connectors, if they're $6, right? So, and it takes somebody 15 minutes to put them together, and let's say we're paying them $20 an hour. And then you have this cable. The cable's got, if the cable's $20, then the cable's got to be what, like $1 a foot? No, it's not. It's got to be like 50 cents a foot. I mean, you can get XLR cable for like, I think I saw it as low as like 17 cents a foot. So put that into perspective. Your 10-foot XLR, which costs $20, is 50% profit, close to it. Because they're not paying what I paid for plugs, and they're not paying what Amazon's charging for plugs. They're paying what the manufacturer charges for plugs, which is probably a quarter of that, because they're going direct and they're buying in bulk. So perspective is we are getting ripped off because they know we need cables. And then you buy the $25 cable because it's the cheapest, and it happens to be the one. And this is the thing that I really wanted to talk about in this whole segment. When you go into Sam Ash or you go into Guitar Center or any other big box place and you buy cables, you make sure you buy a package where the cables are wrapped and not zip tied if you can, because you will pull them out and they will be kinked the moment you buy them.
They'll already have a kink right there. Where
I don't understand why they zip tie them like that. I do not understand how they think it is okay to sell a $25 cable that is like that. If from now on, I vowed, if I ever buy cables again, which it's a very strong possibility I may not, because I'm probably just going to start making my own, I will take it back and I will tell them, I am not buying this cable or I bought this cable. I want a complete refund because you guys are selling damaged merchandise. It's damaged. It's like if somebody threw a cable on the floor, stomped on it, and then cut it, and then put it back on the rack and then sold it to me. Because at some point it's going to fail because guess what? There's a kink in it. And that kink, it could be anywhere in the cable. What you have to understand is the cable is a long, continuous run of electric wire, and it's going to pull on those plugs, and something's going to break. It's going to break on one end or the other or in the middle. And if it breaks in the middle, the cable's completely toast. If it breaks on one end or the other, you might be able to repair it. Exactly. So, I don't know. I'm extremely infuriated by this segment of the industry right now because we have some local cable companies around here. Spectraflex is one. Conquest is one. I buy Conquest speaker cable. I don't have a Conquest cable sitting in front of me. I'd love to show you, Jim. But it's just like, it's really beefy. It's the thickness of like your thumb, right? Yeah. And it's not that the thickness matters for that kind of thing. Because speaker cable, obviously, there's been a lot of people over the years that have tested different gauges of speaker cable. They'll tell you that really it's not that big a deal in this condition and in this length for running a guitar head to a cabinet. The speaker cable that I buy is like really robust, and that's part of the reason why I buy it. And it's apparently they mark like the head and cabinet part of the speaker cable, which is kind of interesting. And I think that's because the cable actually comes with a linearity noted on it. So they've chosen to follow those instructions.
Even though it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in a short application like that you're actually going to be able to notice anything. But I do know that they use the braiding to kind of determine which way the cable goes. So wherever apparently there's some sort of linear flow. If you ever see the braiding, it's like a V. So maybe when they start wrapping it, they go forward, and that's now the descend of the cable for what it's worth. Right. So I don't know. I like going to the local companies. I have excuse me. I have several Spectraflex cables that I use day in, day out in my studio. They're not my go-to cables for live or anything like that. But I think I got 25 footers. They have these unique jacks. They have unique strain relief. They're braided, so they're tough as nails. And I don't think I've had one die since I started using them. And that was 5-7 years ago. So, I mean, they're not horribly expensive. I think a 25 footer is like $30. And I've been using Planet Waves, the American, whatever the American thing is, the American Performer or whatever. And those are really, really good too. But I've heard people have had problems using those in like vintage guitars and things like that because the connector's a little weird. I personally have never experienced any of this. So, I guess
the only one I've had problems with is Monster.
Yeah, well, but Monster. So Monster, I was starting to talk about local mom and pops. Like Monster is like its own animal, and that was a Guitar Center bought into Monster just as bad as Best Buy did, and a lot of people did. And
Best Buy, Walmart dropped them first, I think. Then Best Buy, Guitar Center.
I'm sure I've told this story on the show before, but I'm going to do it again. So Monster. This is my anecdote about Monster cable when it was a thing, because I think it's still out there, but it's definitely not as popular as it once was. Local shop, they came in, the rep coerced them into taking on Monster. And so I guess the deal was you bought the rack, right? And then it just sat and it sat and it sat, and they sold some of it. And then they had some guy come in and buy a bunch of it. And like they had to pay for all of that up front, and it was not cheap for them to resell, which is why the profit margin was so high, or the not the profit margin, but I mean that's why the pricing was high, right? The Monster cable was crap. It wasn't even high quality stuff. It was just, it was what it was.
And what's worse is Monster made this claim that we'll protect the cables for the lifetime of the cable. And they left them out to dry. So a person would come back with a $25 to $50 cable.
And it was the mom and pop's responsibility to just give them a new one.
And the mom and pop
there was
had to give
no
them
reimbursement. Right. So Monster never sent them a new cable. They would have had to buy another rack of cable from them in order to use it. I was told there was a band, and I can't remember who they were, but it's in a book somewhere where they talked about the Monster rep came to the studio. He'd been courting them for a long time. He wanted to sign them up as artists, and they were pushing back and being like, "We don't use your cables." So the guy convinced them. He said, "Just use your cables to make this record. Use our cables to make this record. And then when it's over with, like, we can talk about a deal if you want to do it. And if you don't have to." So they used the cables. Right. And mostly because the guy was just being really pushy. And then at the end of the record, they got an invoice. And they were like, well, wait a minute. Like, I don't understand, because you told us to use them and then we'd give them back and we could, talk about if there's a deal. He said, well, you used them on the record, didn't you? And they were like, well, yeah, but you kind of forced us to. Like, you were pushing them on us. And the guy's like, it was like the copier thing where you call up, the company somebody calls up the company and then they say, what kind of ink is in your, or, in that printer over there? And somebody goes and looks, and then all of a sudden these toner cartridges start showing up with an invoice for, $500 for a toner cartridge.
Yep. I think the horror story, I can't remember who it was, but the horror story we're talking about, the legal precedents that they were using, they being Monster, was that if you got some good out of the thing that you got, then they were entitled to money or reimbursement because you were able to get good from it. Like, okay, there's an old saying that if you get something shipped to your home that you didn't order, you can keep it. That is a fallacy. There is no legal precedent. The legal precedent is actually you are. It's called the reasonable person, right? So the reasonable person has to expect that I did not order that. It is not mine. I need to return it. And then if they tell you, hey, it's too expensive for us we've already shipped it, too expensive for us to return, they tell you to keep it, then you keep it. But they've told you to do that. If they send you a sticker, you have to put the sticker on there and send it back. So it goes along with that expectation that you got. I can't remember what the legal term is, but it means that you got something good for it. You were able to get something out of the gear, and that's a kind of a crappy way of that guy doing business. They probably were silly enough not to get anything in writing, because there are times like when the Beatles used Vox amps. So I told that story. The Beatles management went to Vox, and Vox told them to stuff it. They didn't know who the Beatles were, and they were going to tell them to stuff it. But a local rep gave the Vox said, no, I'm not giving you equipment. So a local store gave the equipment to the Beatles, and thus how the Beatles became Vox users. They still got them for free in the beginning, but they did more for Vox than Vox ever. So Vox never was able to go after them, because in reality, Vox saw a real advantage for having the Beatles use those things.
Here's the strangeness about the Monster cable thing. Like, yeah, we can talk about the legal ramifications of what happened in these situations, but the reason why I was providing these stories is because Monster was a mess. That company was poorly run, and that's why you don't see them much anymore. And I still hear about people from time to time who've got Monster cables, and they're like, yeah, it sucks because it needs a repair. And you know what? I feel you, because Monster is kind of notorious for not being good cable, and you got suckered into it. and that sucks. But
Yeah. Yeah, their connections were poor. A lot of cold solder joints.
they're just junk.
Probably
The
fast.
cables themselves
Yep.
were junk. The only thing that Monster had, and they were smart enough to realize nobody looks inside the cable except for the people that actually know better and wouldn't buy our stuff anyway. All we have to do is make the cable look pretty, put gold connectors on it,
Yep.
and then everybody will think it's great.
Yep. I had somebody at the store the other day going, wow, they were looking at Mugabe's. And they said, same thing. Oh, man, the connectors are gold, so it's got to be better, right? I said, dude, that is the biggest pile of snake oil you are ever going to buy into. Now, if it was real gold, 100% all the way through, number one, it would cost a load more money than what you're looking at. And number two, and probably more importantly, it would be so soft, it would be useless.
The gold plating thing is always like thrown me because I do understand like the idea behind the metal conductivity and all that, but realistically, I mean, with the amount of voltages we're talking about, do you really think there's any increase in fidelity by using gold? I mean, not in a 1/4-inch guitar cable in a guitar rig. That's ridiculous. The amount of fidelity you're gonna get back, you're gonna lose because you're running a 20-foot cable. That's why I'm like, I don't understand. Maybe I'm an idiot. You know, sound off in the group. Let me know if I'm an idiot. That's fine. I've been called an idiot many a time. It wouldn't be anything new. I don't know, man.
The internet is.
I'm sure it's a Twitter with what I said. So, I started to use train wreck profiles, right? And this is partially spawned from the ethos train wreck conversation from last week. And I want a train wreck.
It's crazy.
I've never seen a real one. I've seen real doubles, but I've never seen a real train wreck. And the doubles I've seen have been like Chicago Music Exchange. They were there for like a day kind of thing. I've never played one. Well, maybe I did. I don't remember. There's a very good chance that I didn't. There's a very good chance that I did. Because I've been in the room with one at least once. I think twice, now that I think about it. I've been in the room with 59 Les Pauls too. So yeah, and I think a lot of people have been in the room with 59 Les Pauls, and they may not have even known it. But anyway, so the reason why the train wreck thing is appealing to me. So there is a romanticism part of this, right? So the idea that this guy Ken Fisher, if you don't know anything about train wrecks here, I'm gonna give you the lowdown. There's a guy named Ken Fisher. He started building amps he started repairing amps in the 80s. Actually, probably prior to that. And he was really good at it. And he understood how to repair like the really esoteric vintage stuff that some people were kind of shying away from during that time period. Because you have to understand the 80s, the guys that were repairing tube amps were the same guys that were repairing tube amps in the 60s and 50s. It was really, even at that time, was starting to become an out-of-date technology that people didn't understand. Now, we still have our wizards today. We have people like Reinhold Wagner out there who understand tube technology probably just as well as the engineers who were designing for it in the 30s and 40s. But anyway, I digress. This guy, Ken Fisher, is a renowned amp repair guy, and he starts building amps. Somebody wanted him to modify a Marshall to get the Brown sound. So he takes this Marshall and he does a number on it. And I'm assuming it's a point-to-point job because all the train wrecks are point-to-point. And he uses every ounce of skill he has as an electrical engineer to design this Marshall mod. And it is killer. And as a side project, my understanding is he builds his own and makes a note of all the, the appropriate stuff and draws a schematic and then starts tinkering. And somebody else hears the tinkered amp and they're like, I want one. And he says, well, I can build you an amp. This is how his business grows, right? So it starts off with the Express, which is the Marshall clone, which is not a Marshall clone. The Express actually becomes, and I've heard it described this way, but this is probably a generalization, because I downloaded the schematics, and there's like 9 different variations of the Express in the schematic sheet. And
Right.
some of them are night and day different. But anyway, basically the idea is that it's like a super reverb front end into a JTM 45 back end and some of them have like a cut knob from an AC30, and some of them don't, and some of them have different tone stacks, like they've been modified to do different things slightly differently.
Right.
These are non-master volume amps, so they're loud. They're 30, 50. I think he made some 50-watt ones. He was hand winding his own transformers at one point. He then found the company to make the transformers for him. Hayboyer, I think, ends up being the transformer supplier at some point. I know Mercury has also got their transformers that are very similar to his spec as well. And so essentially what he ends up with this is a like uber boutique thing that's only known to a small group of people. I mean, people, and we're talking people like George Lynch, right? Who are buying these guys. And I've heard, I don't think anybody knows how many actually exist. Maybe the family does. Because the tragedy is Ken Fisher gets sick in the 90s, just as his business is taking off. He continues to take orders. He builds when he can, when he's not too ill. During this period, because he can't build, he's got some celebrity clientele, so he decides to work with a couple of different amplifier companies to produce some amplifiers. He collaborates with Dr. Z, makes the Z-Rec. He sells designs to Comet Amplification, who start to produce designs. I think part of the reason we went to Comet was distribution too, but there's like some varying stuff there. But anyway, he's good friends with all these people, right? He's part of the burgeoning internet culture at that time, like talking to people about tube amps and tube technology, and he gets diagnosed with this illness in the late 90s, and so he builds what he can, and he has these partnerships. He dies in 2006, I believe.
Yeah, it was 2006.
So nobody actually knows how many amps he built, I don't think, because some of them are unbranded. Some of them are just plain boxes. And they're all like themed. He named them after women instead of serial numbers, which is a whole other thing, a whole other throwback ball of wax that would probably get him in big trouble today. But these amps are highly sought after. The crazy thing is, Dumbles are like this too. They have this kind of mystique about them. The guys an enigma. Top players are playing them, etc. Dumbles are, they go for anywhere from like $10,000 on to $50,000 and hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. A train wreck will only set you back like 5 G's. You can buy
the most expensive train wreck is like $30,000.
I mean, that was like a one-off thing that nobody really thought. Nobody even thought it was going to go for that, So you can attain a train wreck. Now, here's the fun part. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, I'm never going to have $5,000 to buy an amplifier. I will, however, have like $1,000 to buy a clone. So I start digging around and I find some people that can build them. I find a forum of people that are like completely devoted to building train wreck amps, which is pretty crazy. And that's where I started down this path of like, maybe I'll just build my own, because it's a simple circuit. There's not a lot of components. They're probably the same amount of components that are in like a 5E3 Deluxe. But that's where my trail ends, because as I'm reading through there, I find an article where a guy's talking about building his first amp and he wants to build a train wreck. And a couple of people are like, it's probably not the best amp for you to build, like if it's your first time. And they're basically like, it's not that it's the component count or anything like that. It's it's not even the layout, because you could buy turret boards that are very similar to Ken's layout. But they're like, if you get the cable as much as a 1/4 inch too long in this one part, you'll have wild oscillation. And that the way that the components are laid out is very specific. And if you mess something up or you do it wrong, you're going to have a mess on your hands. Down to the point where they're talking about the like lead content of the solder and the gold plate,
Yeah.
because all of these things play into the capacitance stuff that's at play in that circuit, and it is like a
Yep.
detail game. And the last thing I want to get myself into is a detail game. So
Right.
that being said, there's some options, right? Fuchs makes a rec clone. I know Two Rock made the Ruby, which is a rec clone. It's an Express clone. Because I only want the Express. He did some other amps too. He did the Liverpool and he did the Rocket, which are vaguely like EL84 things. So
Right.
I'm mildly interested in seeing if I can attain a rec clone at some point. Granted, I had a snap me out of it conversation with Dan Kish this week, and I mentioned to him that I've been playing around with these Trainwreck profiles, and he's very honest with me, and he says, "Why are you even messing around with the idea of buying another amp?" He's like,
Right.
"You've got a Kemper, like it's that should be a done deal at this point." And I admitted to him, I said, I got Trainwreck profiles I really like in the Kemper, and
Yep.
part of the reason is and I'm not saying this as a justification. This is kind of like a rebuttal to what he said that I didn't tell him. The Kemper itself is great at what it models, in the sense that it models the amp with the controls in a specific position. On an amp like a Trainwreck, that's going to vary from guitar to guitar. That's going to vary from cab to cab. That's going to vary from room to room. And what I'm wanting is for it to be in the right ballpark for what I play. So I think I almost do want to have one built for me, and I want to find somebody who knows the circuit well enough to kind of modify it to fit what I play and go that route. The only problem with having one built for you is you have to get it worked on at some point. Does that mean you send it back to the original person that built it for you? Or does that mean that, you get a schematic from them and hopefully somebody else can follow everything to the T, including the length of the wire and the, magnesium properties that are, whatever properties, voodoo that's going on inside the amp. It just sounds like a can of worms. Now, the Fuchs is an option. Fuchs makes one, and apparently there's a circuit boarded, which everybody's like, you don't want a circuit boarded Trainwreck because that takes all the magic out of it. No, actually, that sounds like a great idea. Because for somebody like me who needs consistency and reliability, that sounds perfect, because then I can have it fixed if something breaks, because it's easy to repair a circuit board. I know people are like, oh yeah, turret board's the way to go. And it is, provided you're not dealing with an esoteric circuit like this. I think it's consistency and repeatability is probably better on a PCB at that point. So I don't know. It may happen. It may not happen. I think the same things that I love about the Triple Crown are also the reason that I love the Trainwreck.
Right. That makes
so right now, my performance in my Kemper, so you can set up, different performances. And they have like 5 amp slots. I have a Triple Crown for clean. In the second slot, I have the Trainwreck, and in the third slot, I have a Dumble, and I'm not using any of the 2 other slots. And I can do my solo material with that, which is, if you heard my self-titled thing, that's a lot of ground to cover. But it works, and I have no complaints, and I feel comfortable with what I'm doing. So it is what it is. Jim, what do you got going on? Because we didn't even talk about like what's new with you. I know you've been buying stuff right and left. You got a guitar back there behind you that we didn't even talk about in this episode.
It sounds like I'm buying
20
stuff left and
20
right,
minutes.
but I'm really not.
Go.
All right. I don't even want to take 20 minutes because I'm going to do a whole rundown. So this week there will be a video to put together. I'm working out. This is going to be scripted so it doesn't, become ridiculous. I've got the new Fender Ultra in Mocha Burst. I was going to get a Cobra Blue till I saw the Mocha Burst in person. And it just simply takes your breath away in person. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I've got there. Obviously, all the specs that everybody knows. I don't have to talk about them. But I will say this about the neck. That's the only thing I'm going to talk about right now because I want everything else to be revealed in the because I do have one really weird negative to say about it. For the most part, everything is positive, but the neck is so good. I mean, so I took a professional and I took a performer professional and the ultra, and I did the neck thing. Going up and down the neck. What they did with the ultra was they rounded the edges. It's such a simple little thing, and it's the only one. You would think they would do this with a professional. They rounded the edges just so much that when you're playing it, it goes from 10 to 14. It literally just doesn't fight you at all. I mean, it's just probably one of the nicest decks as far as that, a Stratocaster, okay, that I played. Because with a Strat, I've always felt that it was a little bit odd feeling going up and down the neck, just by take on them. Where I think they did it right this time.
Let's talk about rolled edges for a minute. So,
yep.
I'm sure Fender was not the first company to do rolled edges years and years ago, right? So in the 90s, they did the American Standard Strats with the rolled edges, right? I'm only bringing up that part of the history because that was the first guitar I was aware of where they were rolling the edges on the fretboard. The funny part was I've owned one of those American Standards, and I didn't think that it was really that different from the other guitars, which I had Mexican Strats at the time that I'd owned.
Yep.
And what ends up happening in this thought process is that, of course, I go and I buy some other guitars. I had an Ibanez Destroyer. I've had a bunch of different stuff, and none of them I ever felt like the rolled edges were that big a deal to me. Now, fast forward, I get a Charvel Model A, which was like a weird guitar during a transition period for Charvel when they were changing hands. And I'm not sure whether my guitar was made in the USA or Japan. I've heard both. So anyway, that guitar had rolled edges. That guitar needed rolled edges. And that was the first guitar where I was keenly aware, like, yeah, if they didn't do this, this was going to be a disaster because the neck was so flat and so wide that if you didn't have it, you were going to be uncomfortable. Ibanez makes a big deal out of this on the Prestige Series guitars. They spend hours upon hours on every Prestige neck that comes out of the Ibanez factory. Just making sure that the neck is it fits just right. I'm gonna say something that's gonna probably freak a lot of people out, and I'm gonna get there, but I want you to bear in mind the rest of this argument before we get there, so that I'm not crucified as much. I will be crucified, I'm sure. It's just gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So I have the Kiesel right now. My current guitars are Kiesel and S500. The S500, the neck shape issue for me that is the biggest deal is how fat the neck is into my pull, right? So that back shape. I love D's. I can play C's. I cannot play U's and D's. My Kiesel, because it's a 7-string, it's fairly flat, but it would be a C, I think, in a 6. So it's like a wide C. But it's a thinner neck. Because it's a 7, it needs to be thinner because I don't think it would be playable if it was a baseball bat. And it has rolled edges, mildly rolled edges, right? It's not like nothing I would write home about. Never once have I played a guitar where I look at the rolled edges and I go, oh, this guitar's terrible. Or vice versa. I almost don't even think about it. The only reason I think about it is because it's in the spec sheet.
Well, I only wonder if that, like I said, I just know how it feels. And I don't know if that's what it is, if it's the compound radius or if it's the way that um, the cut is for the neck, the back. And it might be just a combination of those
probably
things.
the shape. That's why I'm kind of getting at. I think it's probably the shape more than the actual rounding. All the rounding does is not make you feel like your hand's getting snagged on it, going up and down, going north south.
Right.
From nut to bridge. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
That's the back shape, at least in my estimation. Now, here's the thing that's going to get me crucified though. I can talk till I'm blue in the face about the neck shapes I like, but it doesn't fucking matter. It actually doesn't matter to me. I can pick up a neck, and if I sit down with it long enough, it just disappears. Even a D and a U, I've played D's and U's, and they're fine. I just have to acclimate to them. And I think Joe Bonamassa says the same thing, which is basically like, I used to be really big into the baseball bats, and now he's like, I just like the ones that I like, and I just pick them up and I play them.
Exactly.
And I don't worry about it anymore. And John Bollinger asked him in that interview, Bollinger asked him, well, he said, does it take any time to acclimate yourself or adjust? He's like, no. Why? He's like, you play enough of them, you don't care anymore. And I think that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like, as long as I have to have a good vibe about the guitar. If I pick it up and I'm like, yeah, I can get down with this, then I'm fine. And here's my example, so that I'm again providing factual evidence about my situation. Gem Juniors. I can pick up an Ibanez Gem Junior, and that neck is a Wizard 3, I think is what they're doing now.
Wizard 3.
Wizard 3s are supposed to be thin as hell. I cannot stand Wizard 3s on other guitars, but I can play it on a Gem Junior. Why? It's the same neck. Literally, the only difference is it says Gem Junior on it. That's it. That's literally it. So why? Why? It's mental, and I know it is, and I don't know why, but I can't change it. I literally, so like S series, Wizard 3 S series, can't play them. It's not. They feel thin to me when I pick them up, and I know it's all in my head. I absolutely know it is, because I spent a good hour jamming on an Ibanez Gem Junior in Guitar Center a month ago. Like, I don't understand why I have that mental block, but there are certain guitars that are like that for me, where I can't vibe with it. I don't know whether it's like the angle of the body or something makes it feel thinner because I have to sit and then my hand is in a certain position or whatever. Another classic example is that Ibanez AZ I bought. So I tried AZs in the store, comfortable as hell. I buy one, it's the same neck, but I find the neck to be less comfortable. Not the guitar, the neck to be less comfortable in the one that I bought. So if anybody has an explanation to this, I would love to know. It's not necessarily, and that's what I guess what I'm trying to say is, I can play all of these guitars. I can play them well. The problem is, do I want to play them? And there are definitely guitars I would gravitate to more, but this is weird because it's not for an aesthetic reason or anything like that. It's because I don't know. I mean, there's some mystical voodoo about the fact that the Gem Junior is different than an Ibanez S series, even though I know the necks are identical.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I said my piece.
Yeah.
And I probably am gonna. Everybody's thinking David just needs to be thrown in an asylum at this point. Last week he's talking about treble and harshness, and this week he's talking about guitars with identical necks, and he can't stand the neck on one, but he likes the neck on the other. I know what I know. That's all I can say.
I think that really, again, it comes down to it. I don't think the neck of a guitar is any different from your favorite burrito or your favorite pair of shoes. You just know what you like. The specs don't really matter.
I think so. Well, I think it's a vibe. I think you just like feel a resonance from it, like in your head. And I will posit this. going along with what you just said, I think that it's a familiarity, but I think it's more than that, because even guitars that it's like Mike Mara, group member, right? He's had a guitar with a warped neck. He's getting a replacement neck. He's concerned about the shape of it being the same, even though it's a warm off, and they're pretty consistent. And I honestly feel like in my case, I would be terrified. I don't care whether it's a warm off neck or what. It could be a laser cut within 1 micron, same size neck as another neck. And I honestly would be terrified. And the only reason is because will I vibe with it? Because I can, just like I just said, an Ibanez neck, Ibanez Wizard 3 with another Ibanez Wizard 3, and they're supposed to be identical, and I like them on one guitar and I hate them on another. I just don't understand it.
Same thing. Again, I can't. I want to use the spec sheet to explain something, but I can't explain what feels right about it. I also know this, and we're coming up to 2 hours, so I also know this. This is the first Jazzmaster I've liked that I actually picked one up and thought, I actually really like this guitar. And no.
I don't think offsets are bad guitars. I have never been a universal offset lover. I think an offset with the right hardware is important, because I think the hardware determines a lot of whether you like a offset guitar.
Right.
I'm not surprised to hear that though. So is the Ultra, is it super big frets?
Okay, I'll tell you what they feel like, because I haven't looked at the spec. All I can tell you is they feel a little bigger.
Do they look like Gibson size? Like taller,
Yeah.
Because the reason I say that is because I played a PRS tonight, and I looked at the frets, and I'm like, I'm touching the fretboard, and this is a new guitar, and I'm going, God, why can't they put a decent size fret wire on there? I mean, I know people like to feel the damn fretboard. I know there's a whole vintage guitar crew of people that are like, I want my frets worn out. I am not that person, and you will not sell a guitar to me by putting tiny, tiny frets on it. It's not going to happen. That is not a preference thing. That is a technique thing, and it screws with me really bad. I can play guitars with small frets, just like I said before, but I'm not going to play the way I normally play. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking up to see what kind of frets it's got on the. So they're saying it's medium jumbo. They feel bigger.
Medium jumbo is still bigger than what I saw in the PRS I played tonight, which was like small vintage or something.
Which PRS?
It was an SE custom. So I think it was a custom 24.
Okay.
Which I don't recall them having tiny fret wire, but apparently they do now. So,
that would bug me.
And all of the PRS guitars, because I'm used to 25 and a half inch scale, and they're 25 inch, the strings feel like rubber bands. The stock strings and the 9s, they feel like rubber bands. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, I don't like it.
So.
Yeah, so they're medium jumbo. So that's not a super big fret, but it is bigger than what I was used to on other strats.
So let's recap. Cabinets are cool and important, and think about them.
Yep.
Don't let other people wrap your cables. Don't get ripped off buying cables. Don't believe cables are snake oil. I don't think we talked about that, but that's. You know that already. And then
they are snake.
Jim bought a Strat Ultra, and he bought it in the Mocha Crappe finish.
The Mocha Crappe.
All right. So Jim, I'm gonna give you. We're gonna go out here in a minute, but we got 3 minutes. I'm gonna give you my hot take on your guitar, and this is not. I'm trying to insult you. I don't like the finish. I'm not trying to be a jerk on that. I probably would have gone rosewood.
That's all right.
And it's just because my preferences are shifting. And then, other than that, I think it's fine. I would have gotten the blue.
And that was the other one. So it was between the Cobra.
This looks like a burst that's got something wrong with
blue.
it. But I guess your MO is kind of getting a burst with something wrong with it, right?
Exactly. Well, so I'm going to, and what's funny is a friend of mine came in tonight and bought the Cobra blue. Okay. So you've seen one up front, right? Up close. You've got one up close. All right. For me, it literally looks like somebody splashed coffee. That's where the mocha come from, right? And it's missing the red. And that's what I love about it. I know it looks wrong.
It's not that it looks wrong. Look, if you're gonna throw coffee on a guitar, don't black the edges. It doesn't have to be bursted like that.
Yeah.
I know the sunburst Strat is like a thing, and that's the color for a lot of the vintage ones because that's how most of them were sold. But I just kind of feel like it's played out. But if you are gonna do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been lighter on the edges, but it's something quirky that I kind of like about it.
I'm a fan of the ugly ducklings, so
that's right. And I am literally looking at a 22 karat gold picture.
Jim, stop it.
It is.
Can I share it with our audience? I have to share with our audience. Jim sends me a message today, and I literally cracked up when I got it, and it said, "Hey, I've been working at Guitar Center for 2 months now, and I haven't incurred any new debt." And I laughed because I'm like, "You're working a second job, Jim. Of course you haven't incurred any new debt, but you spent every cent that you brought in from your second job buying guitars."
Oh no. Yeah, no, I've spent
he's probably see? Now you get it. Yeah, he's not incurring any new debt, but he's not paying off any old debt either.
But I'm not paying anything off. I have to laugh. So you got to think about, since I've worked there, which was only I started late October. So let's just say November, December, and some of October, November, December. So I've been there almost 3 full months, right? I have purchased a Gibson Hummingbird, a Gibson Les Paul, and a Fender Ultracaster.
Isn't there are other things you purchased in that period too and taken back though?
Oh yeah, the Blues Junior.
When did you get the SG?
Back because it was hissy. No, the SG was
right before
months ago. I think right before summer. I think I bought that right before summer.
It could be. It seems more recent than that, but
I think I bought that. It was either just before the 4th of July.
So for those of you that are so inclined, Jim bought I can't say what the actual prices he paid are because I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to know.
I can't.
But he's bought a $17.99 Strat, a $18.99 Strat,
$18.99,
a $24.99 Les Paul,
and a
$2,100 Gibson Hummingbird.
$199 or $22.99 Gibson Hummingbird.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I mean, I spent $600 one time on pedals on my birthday. I mean, I bought,
and I'm already eyeing the Jazzmaster.
Oh my gosh!
I don't know.
If you buy that Jazzmaster, I'm going to come through this computer and I'm going to slap you upside the head and I'm going to be like, "Stop it!"
I'm trying
He's
to find
something.
So
he's trying to find happiness by spending money, and he hasn't figured out that's not how that works. Yeah,
there is no happiness in it. I can tell you that right now. There's no happiness in it. I'm hoping we don't run out of in stock. I want to get a new, because believe it or not, it's cheaper for me to buy a new one than a used one of this. A new Fender Elite Telecaster thin line.
Yeah, because Jim's terrified that he won't get his thin line. Because if you haven't noticed, there's no USA thin line anymore.
There's no USA thin line this year. That is weird.
I told you last week, I think that that's just because they're not popular right now, or that they're so popular, but they're popular with people that don't have a lot of money. And so that's why they keep bumping him into Squire territory and lower level Fender. There was a time period when I was starting guitar where they were offering it only in a Mexican, I think it was like 1 year.
Yep.
Where they did not have like a thin line deluxe or anything like that. Which that's a whole other conversation, the thin line deluxe and that whole thing. But best of luck to you, Jim. I hope you get a chance to spend more money that it's just gonna catch up
They
to you
should
later.
be
You're
allowed.
gonna be selling them. I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I'm trying to talk some sense into you. Like, just slow down.
Me either.
And I found myself in this boat. I actually have enough gear money. I could have bought a cab tonight. I could have bought the overdrive pedal. But I talked to myself and I said, you know what? You got to be smart about what you do because there are things you need more than things you want. And even musically related, there are things I need more than things I want. So
so going to that, the one thing that I've made sure of is, let's face it, I'm treating the Guitar Center
as spending money,
like gig money, and so it's fine because I'm actually doing better than I was because I don't
and it's
spend any of my real
consistent gig,
money.
and so that works. I'm just
The other side of it is that I'm not trying to make myself happy. I'm trying to no. I'm dead serious. What I'm trying to do is fulfill some wants, not needs. Although, let me put it to you this way: the acoustic hummingbird was a need, not a want. Because I really needed a good acoustic, and I bought the one that I thought was best for the money, for what I was doing, and so it was finally, time to step into an acoustic that was going to give me what I needed from an acoustic, not what I wanted. So, and so, the wants are there. I really, as far as Gibson goes, believe it or not, because of the Les Paul I bought, I kind of screwed myself because I don't think I ever want to gig that one, which means if I want to gig a Strat or a Les Paul,
so here's my hot take on that. I think, because we talked about in the show, I think we've talked about like people having
we did,
the archetypical guitars like a Les Paul and a Strat and Telly, and I think that's a lot less important than single coil humbucker. You can emphasize. Well, the reason why I say that is because I think people are more concerned about. He's got him covered. He does. And I think people are more concerned about the look in that instance, and the audience doesn't give a shit. Like, they're not sitting there, oh, well, he's playing an SG instead of that Les Paul. It's like, as long as it sounds right, I mean, who cares? Well, that's the other thing is, like, I've had people tell me that they think SGs are just as expensive as Les Pauls.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Why did you buy that? Because, you could have bought a Les Paul for that amount of money. No, it's about $1,000 less, my friend. If you want to think that, that's cool.
Literally, those two guitars, the Les Paul and the SG, are literally $1,000 apart as far as sticker price.
The having a Strat around, like, versus, that's why I said, like, single coils. I do get, like, the Telecaster more than, because Tele pickups are not really all that much like Strat pickups, which is why it was kind of funny to me that you bought a 3 pickup Telecaster. I was like, why?
Yeah.
Strat and then Telly, like that's the way that should go. But I think you're in good shape right now. That's why I'm like, you're talking about gigging in a Les Paul. I'm like, get an SG. What the hell are you worried about? It says it's a minor thing. Plus, when are you going to have time to gig, Jim?
I haven't. The truth is, so the most likely scenario for me come March. That's really when gigs start to pick up in the area. Come March, like February, early March, I'm probably looking at solo acoustic act. That's probably the most thing I'm going to do. And probably either that one, the Strat or the SG, if I get any electric stuff. So
you got plenty of time to prepare yourself.
Yeah.
In those 10 minutes that you get during the day for a break. All right. For listeners, I have had conversations with Jim where Jim literally has said, "I just got off work. I'm on my way to Guitar Center."
Yeah. And I leave. So a lot of my work days, especially weekdays when I work at Guitar Center, obviously, I'll get off my regular day job and I'll head to Guitar Center. And you've been on those conversations. I get home and have dinner 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes later, 11 o'clock. I don't get to go to gigs. I don't get to go to other folks' gigs. I don't get to go to open mics. I'm doing my first open mic this week in weeks. I don't get to talk to friends. I don't message back and forth with people.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot you could do with that situation. But so hopefully this thing at Guitar Center doesn't last forever for you. And I mean that in a good way, because you got to get some time to get back to yourself too. But get the things you want while you're there. You might as well.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking is that, okay, possibly an elite telly, and possibly definitely a Kemper, definitely, a new set of PA stuff. But in the long run, what's funny is all that's going to do for me, and this is, I don't know how much longer an older guy like me can keep up with it. All it's going to do is take away time, because what's going to happen is I've got a guy that's going to start coming over. We're going to start working on a duet. We're going to put the duet on the road, which means that I'm going to work Guitar Center on my days off, because it's easier to get two people together,
four,
than it is more people. When you have we have to be flexible with your rehearsal schedule. So put two guys in a room with an acoustic guitar, two acoustic guitars, and decent harmony. Now try to gig that. Okay, so there goes my a lot of my weekend evenings. If I don't have a job, or I shouldn't say job, if I don't have hours at Guitar Center, and I get called a lot of times, like I'll think, whoa, I got the night off.
Somebody called in, Jim.
I'm going to do my housework. And then, it happens. And I'm not at the point where I feel that, not that I can't say no, I could say no, but where I want to say no. I've been working hard, to be diligent, making those connections with customers that extend your ability to really enjoy what you do.
Posit this. This is my advice to you, and then I think we can end on this. This is a good situation for you to be in right now. However, from somebody on the outside looking in, I see you buying a lot of guitars and not necessarily things you need for preparing for this thing. So I think you need to switch gears, because I mean, PA equipment is going to cost, and to get the right stuff. Now you're doing a solo or a duet, like that's not as bad, but as well as I do, that could easily transition into being a quad or something at some point. And so you got to kind of prepare yourself for that. We've all bought boards that fit the 3-piece band, and then ended up having to buy another board because we added 2 members. That's something that's, I think, people can relate to. And so you just be cognizant of that, and understand that if you really are planning on doing that and you start like making money gigging or whatever, you may not want to work at Guitar Center very much longer. Yeah, there are benefits to it. You are getting an extra income and you are getting discounts and stuff, but to an extent, like, it's sucking away a lot of your personal time too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that might wind up being why at some point I'm going to have to say,
do it till you can't. Do it till you can't.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, but if I realize like you're in a different age situation than I am, but I think about it too. Like I'm spending all this time. If I'm playing video games, I'm spending all this time playing video games, and I'm not doing anything constructive.
Yeah.
It kills me. It just kills me because it's like I only got so much time on this earth.
right.
Like, what am I doing?
And right now, Warcraft 3 isn't expected to come out for another couple weeks.
That's not a game I'll play.
I'm going to do
I
it
need
for the
stuff I can play
nostalgia
in like
factor.
I can only play stuff in 15-minute increments. So
Yep. I can
All right.
I can understand that.
I have been David,
I have a Jim.
and tonight we were Practical Guitarists.
Very impractical.